Okay, we'll start with this. WBO President Paco Veracel has revealed that he and Terence Crawford have discussed the possibility of Crawford moving up to super welterweight for his next fight. Crawford could use his status as WBO super champion to automatically become WBO mandatory challenger for Tszyu, who is set to face Keith Thurman at 155 on March 30th. That's how Inoue was able to become Stephen Fulton's mandatory straight away. That's how Crawford was able to become Jeff Horn's mandatory straight away. And that's how Usyk was able to become Anthony Joshua's mandatory straight away.
We're all undisputed champions.
It's what they have in common. And upon becoming undisputed champions, that afforded them that designation of WBO Super Champion status. Though it's not exclusive to undisputed champions. If a fighter has been a WBO champion at more than one weight, it's not unusual for them to have that designation as well.
Like Emmanuel Navarrete.
In any event, Crawford is talking about moving up in weight, talking about fighting Tszyu, which we've talked about here on the channel several times. I could go for that fight.
But when would it happen?
The last time Terence Crawford saw action was in late July of last year, practically August, and it's the only fight that he had last year. He only fought once. Eddie Hearn chimed in talking about that, talking about Terence's schedule of activity, saying you've got to stay active. That's the thing with Terence Crawford. He's going to be out of the ring for nearly a year again. Take a fight to Omaha. Defend your world titles. You've got money. It's not like you're going to be fighting for free. You're going to be making millions, but stay relevant. Build your superstar status. People will forget about you. Gervonta Davis, he's another one. Tank is a superstar, but he needs to be more active. These guys have got to be fighting 3 times per year.
Both fighters are connected or have been connected to the PBC.
Gervonta's been with the PBC, we know that, but Terence Crawford, at least in the last calendar year, he only recently got all tied up with the PBC. Errol Spence, what was supposed to be the Errol Spence rematch that now isn't happening. If he's lost a bit of time, it would be for that reason.
Because after the fight, Errol activated his rematch clause and they had to see if that could happen, would happen. We now know that it isn't.
Terence is all but a free agent now. He doesn't actually have a promoter behind him, so when you say that he needs to stay active and he needs to stay busy, while I don't disagree, how's it supposed to happen if he ain't got no money behind him?
He's not really a PBC guy.
Not that the PBC has any money. So many rumors about what they're going through and what they have going on. Talked enough about that. Terence Crawford is now entertaining the idea that he might move up in weight to see about becoming a 4-division champion opposite the ring Tszyu if he beats Keith Thurman.
That's the word from Paco.
Which is encouraging because it's not just rumors and whispers, it's the actual WBO president saying it.
What about Boots?
Not everybody is happy to hear this news that Terence may be facing Tszyu in his very next fight. Some would prefer that he fight Jaron Boots Ennis, who's the email IBF champion at 147. So one fucking idiot suggests that because Jaron Ennis has more Instagram followers than Tszyu, he has more marquee value than Tszyu.
Jesus Christ.
Instagram followers. Instagram. That's how he makes the case that Jaron Boots Ennis is a bigger domestic draw in America than Tszyu is in Australia.
Look at the screen, stupid.
If Jaron Boots Ennis is a bigger draw domestically than Tszyu, show me when he fought in front of crowds this size.
Show me.
Show me when Jaron Boots Ennis has headlined a show and drew out this many people, because Tszyu's been doing that. He's been doing that since 2020.
Show me.
Show me when Boots drew out an audience that size. Show me when he did that opposite the ring somebody that wasn't a big name, because Tszyu, he doesn't need a big name to draw out this many people.
You can draw out this many people with a Brian Mendoza, with a Carlos Ocampo,
with a Stevie Sparks, who was standing in for Michael Zarafa in Australia. Tszyu, comparatively,
he's a bigger draw in Australia than Boots is in America. In Australia, Tszyu's on pay-per-view.
He's not just on pay-per-view, he's headlining. He's been headlining his own pay-per-views on several occasions, whereas Boots...
Come on.
Many times as I've explained this, Jaron Boots Ennis is not a PBC fighter, and apparently neither is Terence Crawford. He's a free agent. So who, pray tell, would put up the money for these two guys to fight that would be enough to satisfy their financial demands to get them in the ring?
People just keep assuming that the PBC's supposed to do it when neither guy is a PBC guy. Now, Tszyu, He is.
He's a PBC fighter. Not that PBC has the money. I don't think they have the money, but if nothing else, Tszyu also has No Limit Promotions, who have been promoting him since before he paired up with the PBC. So if somebody's going to put the money up, they could. They've made several big shows for Tszyu in his native Australia,
Where he's a pay-per-view star, unlike Jaron Boots Ennis in America. So you have that arm of revenue when it comes to Tszyu.
Though as many times as I've explained this, you still have a petulant group of individuals that refuse to understand. They don't want to, because what they want is for me and you to look at Jaron Boots Ennis as the second coming of Sugar Ray Leonard for no other reason other than he's American.
Errol Spence was American, and you see what happened to him.
Many of these Boots fans, these Boots supporters that are talking him up just so happen to have been Errol Spence Jr. fans, but since he failed to live up to their expectations, they're now hoping that Jaron Ennis can help to save face for them. That's what it's all about. They know it, you know it, I know it.
Everybody knows it.
The Tszyu fight, in my opinion, is an even better fight than the Jaron Boots Ennis fight, because with that fight, Terrence has the opportunity to move up in weight and see about becoming a 4-division champion, which is a very short list of fighters that can say they've done that.
If nothing else, it's more commercially viable.
Though I know that I may as well be speaking Chinese when I use words that have more than 2 or 3 syllables.
To these morons.
But they're the ones that make themselves readily available for these arguments, for these discussions, hawking and stalking pages.
Discussions nobody's having with them.
Crying to guys like me and you as if that's going to change Jaron Ennis's circumstances, or just what the circumstances are overall.
Too fucking stupid to talk to.
Bottom line, if the wheels are in motion behind the scenes for a Crawford versus Tszyu fight, I'm all for it. I'll go as far as saying I think it's a better fight than a Jaron Ennis fight. And if you don't like it,
Kick a fucking rock.
and super middleweight news, the ongoing story as it pertains to Canelo Alvarez's departure from the PBC. Al Heyman's PBC were reportedly willing to pay Canelo Alvarez's guaranteed purse for the Jermall Charlo fight in May, but only if he agreed to fight David Benavidez in September. It's claimed that Canelo's 3-fight deal with the PBC initially set out guaranteed purses for various potential opponents, but Benavidez was never one of these, and Canelo did not want to agree to a reduced purse for the Jermall Charlo fight or to face an opponent who wasn't initially agreed upon in Benavidez. Hence the split.
That's per Dan Rafael via his sources.
You may have seen or heard this version of the story circulating since it was officially announced that Canelo Alvarez is leaving the PBC, what seems like spin to me.
How so?
Because it's the opposite of what Eddie Reynoso said just a few days ago. Just a few days ago, Eddie Reynoso said that no offer was ever made for a David Benavidez fight by Al Heyman, by anybody. Eddie Reynoso told ESPN Sports in Spanish that he did not receive a $55 million offer for Alvarez to face Benavidez, as Benavidez's promoter, Samson Lukowicz, reportedly suggested. And he dismissed the notion that the undisputed super middleweight champion is afraid of Benavidez as being in very bad taste. The reality is that none of the big promoters, not Al Heyman from PBC, not Eddie Hearn from Matchroom, not Bob Arum from Top Rank, and not even Oscar De La Hoya from Golden Boy, have given me an offer to fight Benavidez, and certainly not Terrence Crawford, Reynoso said. He went on, Canelo team has a direct line with Al Heyman, and I really doubt that anyone from PBC will come out to support what Lukowicz is saying. For wanting to save the way he has handled his fighter, it's not our fault that Benavidez has not had the opportunities that they shout so much about. Our job is for Canelo to shine, and to continue to shine, as he has until now.
He's not wrong. It's not like anybody from the PBC came forward to corroborate Dan Rafael's version of the story via his sources, whoever they are, whoever he spoke to.
Whoever is saying that an offer was made for Canelo to face David Benavidez, Eddie Reynoso not but a few days ago said no such offer was made. There was never an effort made to make a David Benavidez fight, and he wasn't part of the original deal.
Whose fault is that?
Another bona fide case of he said, she said in the sport of boxing, of which there is no shortage of. Who do you want to believe?
Whoever you believe, whatever version of the story you go with, there's one thing that's consistent.
It seems that Al Heyman would not honor the original deal unless amendments could be made, and when Canelo Alvarez was was unwilling, that left the door open for him to leave.
Otherwise, Al Haymon would have been able to hold him to the deal.
He couldn't hold him to the deal because he was the one that couldn't honor it. He wanted changes made.
And Canelo was unwilling.
That's the common denominator, that Al Haymon didn't want to deliver upon what was originally agreed. CompuBox's Dan Canobio and former world champion Chris Algieri talked about it on their podcast.
And on the opposite end, it makes sense from a Canelo standpoint to pull out of that deal. Because if you're telling me that I was supposed to fight Charlo 1, Charlo 2, and I'm guaranteed $35 million, and now you're not coming up with it because the first Charlo didn't fight hard and pretty much sunk his brother and the rest of boxing, and now that's not a moneymaker. That's not my fault. That's your guys' fault. You owed me the money. If that was the deal, I agree with Canelo. If my minimum's 35, and you told me I had a 2-fight deal with the Charlo brothers. Now we're speculating. We don't know that for sure. Apparently that's what it was. And Canelo now has to fight somebody else when he was locked down to Charlos. I don't blame him. You know, listen, you got a deal. You just posed it that Canelo's pulling out of the deal. Well, it looks like the deal was pulling out from him already, and he's just not taking it because he's Canelo and he doesn't have to. He did this with De La Hoya too. That's when he sued Golden Boy back in 2020 after the pandemic, and he wasn't making his minimum money. You don't make my money. Yeah, Canelo's like the government, man. Pay me, bro. You got to pay that man, or he's gonna move on, and he's doing it again.
He seems to have issues with every promoter.
Yeah, well, because he's the boss. Promoters
Right.
are not used to having fighters tell them what to do.
What did I say? What did I tell you in my previous video? It's not the Al Haymon show. Al Haymon is not in charge. Canelo Alvarez is in charge. If you can't hold up your end of the bargain, and it seems that he couldn't, Canelo's gonna walk. He did it to Oscar, now he's doing it to you.
You don't just amend the terms of the deal because you feel like it, because your fighters are fucking up.
Because Jermell Charlo didn't come to fight, and Jermall Charlo stunk out the joint. Opposite the ring, a guy who used to campaign as a welterweight. This is what you agreed to. You told Canelo you'd give him $35 million apiece for the both of these guys. Now either you can honor the deal, or you can't. But if you can't, he's gonna walk.
You're powerless to stop him.
People are angry about that because in their mind's eye, they think it's always supposed to work out to where Al Haymon is in control, and Al Haymon should get what he wants. And if he wants to change the terms of engagement in the middle of the contract, he should be able to do that.
Yeah, that's not how contracts work.
You can pull that crap on your own fighters. You can't pull that crap on Canelo. What's this? You told me I'm guaranteed $35 million per fight. Now what you want me to do is fight the same guy at a discounted price, or I have to fight a DAZN fighter. For fighting a DAZN fighter, I might as well go back to DAZN.
Dan Rafael's version of the story seems to indicate that they would have given him the 35 for Charlo if he would have agreed to fight David in September.
David Benavidez. The problem with that version of the story is Eddie Reynoso said just a few days ago, no offer was ever made from anyone, Al Haymon included, for a David Benavidez fight.
So at minimum, that requires some reconciliation, because that's a case of he said, she said.
Fighter, but he hasn't really fought anybody.
But you know, at the end of the day, who is the other options? The only option right now on the table is Canelo never got Benavidez offers for May and all this big money that everyone's talking about. They said to him, you can fight Jermell Charlo, and by the way, the money that we promised you, we're not even promising you that anymore.
Al Haymon was expecting Canelo Alvarez to go for that.
He don't even want to fight Charlo. He don't even want to fight Charlo. He don't even want to fight Charlo.
Did you catch that? Isn't that what I told you? Canelo didn't actually want to fight Jermall Charlo at that point. At that point, he was just using Charlo to get out of the deal. If you can't honor the agreed upon terms for the Charlo fight, what's supposed to be the Charlo fights, then he wants to skate.
So he's got to look at other options. He's got to look at young fighters that are ready. If Benavidez wants to come and talk to us and make that fight, we can talk to him and make that fight, no problem. But if he's leaving the PBC because they haven't delivered on what was planned, you can't expect him...
Can't expect him to let you pull the old switcheroo on him. And that's what Al Haymon was trying to do. Eddie Hearn has told reporters that he would happily try to make the Canelo Alvarez versus David Benavidez fight on DAZN. The PBC don't want to work with anyone, and now they're fucked. If Benavidez wants to come and talk to us and make that fight, we can make that fight. No problem.
What did I tell you?
What have I been telling you? Canelo Alvarez leaving the PBC and going back to Matchroom and DAZN, that doesn't mean the Benavidez fight is dead.
Even with David Benavidez potentially going up to 175 and fighting Alexander Vojtic, if he wants to come back down, he can come back down, and he can have that Canelo Alvarez fight on Matchroom and DAZN.
Because you're not the A-side, you're not in control, and it's not your party, it's not your show, it's not Al Haymon's show either. It's not the Al Haymon show. It's the Canelo Alvarez show.
Then what are so many people getting upset about?
Because they want it to be. They want Al Heyman to be the one that's in control. They want him to be at the helm of promotion. They want him to captain the effort, captain the ship.
Do you think David will do what he has to do?
Well, that depends. That really does depend, because there is a difference that most people don't talk about. There's a difference between the fight happening on Matchroom and DAZN and the fight happening over there at the PBC. The PBC that reportedly, at least according to Victor Conti, have a gag order for all of their fighters and their anti-doping tests.
We've talked about that.
Seems to be a bit of secrecy around the anti-doping tests and the results for PBC fighters. You don't see them announced the way you see with Matchroom fighters. Matchroom that uses more anti-doping agencies than anybody out there, whether you're talking about UCAT in the UK or VADA in America, as well as drug-free sports.
What's this got to do with David Benavidez?
His strength and conditioning coach is none other than the infamous Memo Heredia and his infamous Memo Shakes.
You know how Victor Conti has a sketchy past, anti-doping and all of that? Yeah, so does Memo Heredia.
So when you see that David Benavidez has been able to boil down to 168 for as long as he has, you start to wonder how's he been doing that, and if those infamous Memo Shakes don't have something to do with it. When you say that you're willing to go up to 175 for Vajdik, then come back down for Canelo.
If this fight happens on the Matchroom side of things, you're gonna get tested.
It's not like what you have going on over there at the PBC, where everyone is sworn to secrecy and anti-doping testing and the results are never announced. It's not like that. Not if you do the fight on Matchroom and DAZN. So when you think about what Eddie Hearn said, that the fight can still happen, that if David Benavidez is willing to talk,
Willing to walk.
walk across the street, because you're not the A side, you're not in control. If the difference between you fighting Canelo and not fighting Canelo is going to Matchroom,
Then go to Matchroom.
you're big and bad. What difference does it make what side of the street it's on? You're the Mexican monster. Or is it that you're only a monster on the PBC side of things, that you may struggle to stay in character if you have to leave the island? I do question as to whether or not David and Samson will take Eddie Hearn up on his offer.
And if they don't, what's the excuse gonna be? That it's gotta be on PBC or nowhere?
You guys are going to dictate to Canelo what platform the fight happens on.
We'll see.
So Jose Benavidez take to his social media, claiming that Canelo Alvarez is ducking David Benavidez. Well, not if Eddie Hearn is still offering to do that fight.
What are you gonna do, pout?
The fight's not dead. It's still a big money fight. It can still happen.
If you want it to happen.